I already like it.
I know, I don't like that they don't match.
Yeah.
You waiting for your own timer to go off over there, miss?
Well, I mean, my clock's right, that's fast.
I set that myself about a year ago, right?
I'm a-
Get up on a chair.
Well, we're gonna fix it. Just
It
hold
stresses
on.
me out. Okay, it's 6:15, so we can have the utility committee start, and you can take the floor.
Okay, Utility Committee, I'm asking you to look at ordinance that we need to have done to get reappraisals on some assets that we're looking at selling. It's required by law for us to do this. It's unused, we have capacity on some unused circuitry that a transmission company is interested in buying from us. To do so, the regulators say we have to get 3 appraisals. So that's what you're approving, is for us to get 3 appraisals. This process will take well over a year. If it does go through and everything works out, we would probably close on something like this in 2025.
Any questions?
So you get the appraisals, and then you'd have to do a big RFP and all that.
It's just the appraisal portion now. The
But I
next-
mean, in the future, would you have to be?
No, because we already have a buyer. The next piece would be the regulatory presentation to the bodies that would review it. The next step for us then would be, what we're currently working on is the purchase agreement between us and the company that wants to buy it. So we would have that finished, and then it would go to hearings in front of the regulatory bodies, and then they would hear the case. And then any interveners would be able to say, you know, either they support or object us selling the asset. If we hear none, then it would go through, and it takes, you know, all this stuff takes 120 days in between each one of these things. That's why it takes a year and a half to close. But, you know, it is a regulatory body that's doing the monitoring of it, so. But it is in our best interest to look at selling it. At this point, it seems to be the right thing for us to do.
So can you disclose who the buyer is?
No. No, we'll tell that when the regulatory body announces it publicly, we'll be able to say who that is. But at this point, we can't. I can tell you privately, but I can't say it publicly.
It's gonna be-
They'll announce publicly who the buyer is when they make the announcement of the case.
And do you have 3 appraisers that you,
We have the appraisers line, and they're written here. 2 of them have to be engineers, one of them is the property appraiser.
That's what I was gonna ask you, the one from Flora, they're just a property appraiser.
He's the property appraiser from Flora. I couldn't use anyone from Logansport. They had to be outside of our geographic area. So we couldn't use anyone inside it. We had to have 2 engineering firms and 1 property firm. The oddness of that is the property appraiser, we're not selling any property. But it still has to be done.
Do you take the highest appraised value or
No,
average?
they actually work together to come up with the appraised value based upon just a bunch of different things that they'll present to the regulatory body.
Now, is
these
that-
3 appraisers know that they have to work together to come up with a cumulative appraisal value for this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, is that the IURC, or is it
Well,
a different body?
Well,
When you
the
say
IURC will look at it too, but the Federal Regulatory Commission will look at it as well,
To control the grid in general, or?
all the grid.
This will be moved forward to the council meeting?
Yeah, This is a administrative step at this point.
Just on the agenda for tonight, you say?
Yes.
Okay.
So are you gonna, we're just gonna have a first reading tonight and approve it, is that correct? Or
It
did you
only
wanna?
needs
One
one.
reading. It's
Yeah.
a resolution, just needs.
So you just needs 1 reading so we can approve it tonight so it can move forward? Okay.
That's it.
Anything else?
Where's this? You said from Walton to Logansport.
Turn the page and there should be a map. On the very, very last page.
long have we had that, Greg? Just out of
Built it in 81.
81?
What did you say?
We built it in 1981.
Okay.
And we don't need it, huh?
It's a liability. We do all the maintenance on it at this point, and so if anything happens to it, we're the ones that have to maintain it. But the issue with that is, we're not a transmission line company. So all the maintenance, we have to contract out to a transmission provider. And so we own a piece of transmission line, but we're not a transmission company. So we can't service it, but yet we're required to provide the service on it. And it's got a capacity on it that we don't use its full potential, but we can't sell the additional capacity to other people because we're not a transmission company. So it just sits on you.
Someone else could do that.
It just makes sense for us to give it to someone else that will take better care of it, get it off our books, relieve us of the fiscal responsibility for it, pay us for it in the meantime, and upgrade it and do the things it needs, considering it was built in 81.
So is it all tied in with MISO so that it wouldn't affect whatever we had to pay
That's
MISO?
the beauty of it, Dave. It becomes a piece of MISO. And so once it's in there, we will pay to get transmission services on it, but it'll be a fraction of all MISO charges. So that 13 miles gets put into all of MISO. So most distribution companies won't even see a change in their MISO distribution charges because it's so short.
And it'll help us with the liability and the maintenance.
We won't have any liability.
Yeah.
It'll be their responsibility at that point.
Do you know what the cost that you paid to maintain this is?
Yeah, we spend, right now, our contract value, we spend about $60,000 a year.
Excuse me?
60,000. So we spend $60,000 a year just as a retainer to have it, to have a company on, just to be retained. And then we'll spend anywhere from $100,000 to $200,000 a year on maintenance.
You really hate to lose an asset like that, don't you?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough one.
Any other questions? Everyone's good with moving it forward? Sure. All right, 6:22, and the utility committee can come
See
to
in
an
about
end.
an hour.
Yeah, see you in an hour, thanks.
Thank you.
All gone?
You could take that out of order on the agenda.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. Did you get your book, Kelly? Your book?
Yes, thank you. Who do I? Oh, right.
It was taken out of your budget.
How you doing, Chris?
Can we put anything for consensus besides get us moved forward?
Just one out of three.
Exactly, there you go.
Be my luck.
Still got 3 minutes.
It doesn't match up.
6:28:30.
Blame the person sitting next to you.
That's unfair. Good time, I said it years ago.
It's getting too much electricity. It's juiced up.
We can create that, I promise you.
There you go, Tyler. Great job. Good evening. It is 6:30 p.m., Monday, March 4th, 2024. I'm Mayor Chris Martin, calling to order the regular session of the Logansport Common Council. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
BJ Cox,
Present.
Chris Howard,
Present.
Cameron Austin,
Present.
Haley Zinsmaster,
Present.
Scott Beatty,
Present.
Susie Wamsley,
Present?
Dave Morris.
Present.
All right, we'll start with the approval of minutes for the regular session's February 5th, 2024 meeting. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Any further discussion? Call for question?
Dave Morris,
Yes.
Susie Wamsley,
Yes?
Scott Beatty,
Yes.
Haley Zinsmaster,
Yes.
Cameron Austin,
Yes.
Chris Howard,
Yes.
BJ Cox.
Yes.
All right, reports from committees, boards, and commissions.
We had a Rules Committee meeting on February 26th where we discussed updating the minimum housing standards. The building commissioner discussed adding liability insurance to requirements for electricians. And then we discussed updating the animal control ordinance.
Had a Finance Committee meeting on February the 26th, where we discussed Myers Spring tax abatement, a new agreement with Economic Development, the Cledo and Bill Cuppy in the city of Logansport, on sponsorship for Squeal on the Eel. We discussed the Memorial Home roof replacement, Dykeman Park Clubhouse update by Jan Foley, and swimming pool upgrades and the funding for that. And all of them just about moved forward. The Memorial Home has no ordinance or resolution, and Dykeman Park was just information.
At 6:15 tonight, we had a utility committee meeting, and Greg talked to us about the transmission line and how we need to get appraisals to have it sold, and that will move forward to tonight's meeting.
All right, any other reports from committees, boards, and commissions? All right, seeing none, moving on to old business, ordinance 2024-02, Councilman Howard.
Ordinance 2024-02, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Logansport, Indiana, establishing a fire prevention division within the Logansport Fire Department to promote fire safety by adopting policies and procedures, creating and confirming emergency powers, and establishing fines and fees to further fire safety for violations of this and other ordinances, as well as Indiana statutes. I ask for a second reading on ordinance 2024-02.
Second.
Any further discussion? Call for question?
BJ Cox,
Yes.
Chris Howard,
Yes.
Cameron Austin,
Yes.
Haley Zinsmaster,
Yes.
Scott Beatty,
Yes.
Susie Wamsley,
Yes?
Dave Morris.
Yes.
Ordinance 2024-02 passes on its second reading. Ordinance 2024-04, Councilwoman Zinsmaster.
Ordinance 2024-04, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Logansport, Indiana, amending the bylaws of the Common Council as established in Ordinance 97-1 and amended by Ordinance 01-33 and 2014-04. And I would ask for a vote on Ordinance 2024-04 on its second reading.
Second.
Any further discussion? Call for question?
Dave Morris,
Yes.
Scott Beatty,
Yes.
Chris Howard,
Yes.
Susie Wamsley,
Yes?
Cameron Austin,
Yes.
BJ Cox,
Yes.
Haley Zinsmaster.
Yes.
Ordinance 2024-04 passes on its second reading. Ordinance 2024-05, Councilman Morris.
It's 2024-05, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Logansport, Indiana, amending the Logansport Fringe Zoning Ordinance for drainage and erosion control standards. I make a motion to approve.
Any further discussion? You have a second? Second? Petey?
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Call for question?
Susie Wamsley,
Yes.
Haley Zensmaster,
Yes.
Cameron Austin,
Yes.
BJ Cox,
Yes.
Chris Howard,
Yes.
Scott Petey,
Yes.
Dave Morris.
Yes.
Ordinance 2024-05 passes on its second reading. Ordinance 2024-07, Councilman Petey.
Ordinance 2024-07, an ordinance, the Common Council of the City of Logansport, Indiana, rezoning property located at 133 West Wheatland Avenue, Logansport, Indiana, second reading. Mr. Mayor, I ask for a vote on ordinance 2024-07, please.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Call for question?
Scott Petey,
Yes.
Susie Wamsley,
Yes.
BJ Cox,
Yes.
Chris Howard,
Yes.
Dave Morris,
Yes.
Haley Zensmaster,
Yes.
Cameron Austin.
Yes.
Ordinance 2024-07 passes on its second reading. Ordinance 2024-06, Councilman Austin.
Ordinance 2024-06, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Logansport, Indiana, amending the Logansport and fringe zoning ordinance for structure standards. I make a motion to ask for a vote for 2024-06.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Can I make a motion here for you? I'd like Aaron to come up and talk on this, but before we start the discussion on this, I was wondering if we could hear Resolution 2024-102 first. Greg out of his misery here, let him go home.
That'd be nice.
Can I make a recommendation like that?
Yeah. Everyone else okay with that? Moving? All right. So now we will go back to Resolution 224-102. Councilwoman Wamsley, sorry.
Resolution 2024-102, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Logansport, Indiana, ordering the appointment of appraisers. I move for a vote on Resolution 2024-102.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Anyone have any additional questions for Greg before we vote? Okay.
Greg, for those of us who don't understand this, can you please come up and explain this to us, please?
That's me up, Dave. I came all the way up here. In the way now.
We are looking at selling an asset of the utility which requires 3 appraisals to get through regulatory bodies. This is just the second step out of 6. If this goes through and it seems to suit our needs, this will be something that won't happen to the middle of 2025. So it's going to be a lengthy process, but it's really, we're in the early stages of this right now. But the appraisal is really one of the first steps.
Of course.
Yep. And this is the right thing for us to do in that it's a liability of an asset that we pay to maintain. And so other people want to buy it and we would like to sell it.
Why not, right? Exactly.
That's what I think.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate that. Any further discussion on Resolution 2024-102? Aaron, did you want to update on something?
No, I said it's nice that they made sure that you didn't have to sit here and listen to me.
I do that.
He's on my plan commission, so he hears all this stuff already.
It was a special request.
I'm sure it was.
Why?
All right, we'll call for question on Resolution 2024-102.
Dave Morris,
Yes.
Susie Wamsley,
Yes.
Cameron Austin,
Yes.
Scott Petey,
Yes.
Haley Zensmaster,
Yes.
BJ Cox,
Yes.
Chris Howard.
Yes.
Very good. Thank you, Greg. Now, Dave,
Hers is a good one.
is it okay? Thanks, Dave. Move back. All right. So now, ordinance 2024-06, we already got the reading. Aaron, would you like to
Okay.
comment?
So I sent some information on to you guys, so just to quickly, for everybody in the public to understand the process of this, it's a little bit different than most ordinances. The state says exactly time frame and what you have to do to make any changes to the zoning ordinance. So first it goes to public hearing at the Plan Commission, then it comes to council. Council then has a couple different options. You can approve it based off the recommendation of the Plan Commission, or you can deny it, or you can send it back. At our last meeting, we sent it back to Plan Commission. Plan Commission then reviews what you sent back. So I asked a lot of questions last time because it has to have kind of the language that the city council wants in that ordinance when you send it back, so that the Plan Commission only votes based off what you want. It's not a rehearing, it's not a making all of these changes, it's based off what the council sends back. So they then reviewed, and I did send out a staff report that showed exactly the changes that I made from the last ordinance. From that, they voted to deny, their recommendation is to deny the request that was sent back to the council. So now the option, it comes back to the council, and the council's options are, again, to approve, you're looking at the changes. So you're not looking at that first ordinance that you saw. You're looking at the ordinance you sent back to Plan Commission. So you're either going to approve those changes that they're recommending not to approve, you're going to deny those changes, or you can also make new amendments and send it back to Plan Commission. So I just wanted to have everybody understand that procedural. So this is talking about the storage containers. What was changed, see if I can get that real quick. What was changed from the last meeting was that you had sent back 650 square feet instead of 750 square feet, and then allowing for shipping containers. So we removed the whole section that talks about shipping containers, storage containers, what have you, being used, not being able to be used for single family. I did send some materials on, is that we do have some stipulations on how you can build with metal, basically, in our community. But the beautiful pictures you showed would be great, but we allow, basically, if you change the tone of, so if you have two-tone metal, so one tone's one color and the top's another color, that would meet our stipulation as long as you're 10% fenestration, so the windows and the doors. And then another one would be you can use other materials. It's a kind of a 60-40. Or if it's all windows, so as the storage containers can be long, if they would face that section towards the street and put just all windows in that front short section, that would also meet our standard. So allowing that would allow that in any district in the whole community. So what the board's concerns are is that they're not built to last. They're 25 years. Typically, shipping containers, if they're used, they then put them in, get rid of them after 12 years or so. And then because they're flat roof, you can get the rusting happening, the sitting of water, some other things like that. If people aren't going to maintain that metal structure, it's going to dilapidate a lot sooner than some of your other structures being built. With all of that said, and I can go into more if you'd like, but with all of that said, their concern is just allowing it. Now, they feel that it's appropriate in some areas, possibly, and they feel that it's appropriate depending upon how they're doing it. So to be able to have them go through a process and review that, instead of just outright allowing it, is what they're proposing with the changes.
That would make sense.
You're just doing like a case by case, correct?
Correct. So if someone really wanted to do that, we would take them through the process when we review what they want to do. And then depending upon that neighborhood and that look and feel and whatever they're planning on doing, the board would decide, the Board of Zoning Appeals would decide if that would be allowed or not, or if they could tweak something to fit it better in that community, that neighborhood. So that's basically what they're asking, is to not allow it as of a right where they can just pull a permit, but there's a review process in doing that.
So we would have to vote down the changes that we recommended.
Oh, so I also forgot to mention, I think I put it in the email, but they're okay if you wanted still the 650, but when you send something back to them, they have to do the recommendation based off everything that was submitted. So if the council still was set on 50 and wanted to send that back for discussion as the minimum square footage for a single family, you could send that back. So if you would deny it, then the problem is we have to go back through the whole process to bring it back to you. So we have to do the public hearing and everything like that. What I would recommend is either sending it back saying we want to go back to how it was before or make changes or however, and do the 650 or whatever you'd want to do. Make those changes, send it back to them for them to do a recommendation back to you. So if you feel like we understand their concern on the storage containers, we'll leave it how it was originally presented. We would send that back and then make just the change of the 650 if you still want to do that. Does that make sense? Anybody have questions for me?
So basically, we could send it back and say we're in favor of 650 for the square footage minimum, and say that we would rather go back to the original wording and have those, if someone wanted to construct something like that, they'd have to bring it before the Board of Zoning
Yes.
Appeals.
So that would be sending it back, and then they would do another recommendation back to you from.
You wouldn't have to have the public hearing and.
Yeah, we wouldn't have to have the public hearing. It's just they're reviewing your requests back. That's all they would be reviewing.
How long does a review take?
So they, by state, have to do it within 45 days. So we usually try to, on the BZA, okay, so it's 30 days. If someone would want to do a shipping container, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Or the review of blanket, okay. The shipping container, if they want to do it, it's a 30-day process. And then on the 31st day, if they get approved, they can pull their permit. But for Plan Commission, when you send it back, they have 45 days to bring it back. That's why it was kind of,
So I'm good with what you just said, but then what do we?
So
Have to do.
I can recommend that we send it back with the 650 and the original language of no storage containers.
yeah, so then I would send it back, they would do a recommendation, then I would come back with a new first reading of an ordinance, basically.
So we were not voting on anything then? No.
Correct, you would be sending
Okay.
it back.
We just have to make a consensus here.
That's what you want
my
to do.
opinion.
You would still vote on it, you would just be voting to send it back versus
Okay.
approval or
Requires a
denial.
motion then?
I would like to make a motion to retain the 650 on the minimum square footage and just let the Board of Zoning Appeals handle any storage container building. Back to the original language that they had. It doesn't close the door on those, it just makes them go through the process of getting approval for the location and what their plan is.
That still will include the case by case?
Correct.
Okay,
I can second that if that was.
I'll second that.
I still don't understand, why their main causes, and, the one person said, we just don't like them,
So it was the Plan Commission Board, are you saying, and then
Is there
they,
anybody on their engineers or their architects on the planning board or anything?
there's multiple different people that live in the community, there's LMU people, there's council people, and there are 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, and then people that live in the fringe. So there's 9 people on that board, and then the people that would be reviewing anybody coming forward, there's 5 people on that board.
If a person wanted to build a special house, does he have to go in front of the board and be reviewed for anything?
If they were taller than allowed, or if they're not meeting a setback, or if they're not meeting a certain stipulation, yes.
BJ, anybody who wanted to have a container house would have to go and get special approval because, well, if
What
they
if the
send it
board say
back
no?
and we approve it, then we're agreeing that we're not going to let anybody build container houses unless they go and have a review and get approved. And it's not, people can still build what you want them to build, BJ. They just have to get approval to do it, that's all.
And they could say no, but typically our Board of Zoning Appeals, I would say 90% of the time say yes, and they just try to tweak things to make sure it meets with whatever's going on in that neighborhood. So if they're asking for a 3-foot setback, let's say, and they say, well, could you skinny it up just a little bit more so that it's 1 foot or whatever it would be, that's the whole point of the Board of Zoning Appeals, is to kind of have that discussion point.
And it gives, in different neighborhoods, it kind of gives the neighbors some
Yes.
say in, I mean, if I lived on the boulevard, which I don't, but if I did, and there was a small tract of land up there, I don't know that I'd want a small container home in between mine and the neighbors. I mean, I think there's areas where it might be appropriate, it would fit in with the size of homes and things, but there's other places where it wouldn't be. And this would give the neighbors a chance to have a voice in the decision.
So for that meeting, the neighbors within 100 feet would be notified, or adjacent and adjoining, depending upon the distance they are. So that kind of gives the neighborhood some insight and some say if they want to see that next to them.
Motion and a second. Call for question.
Dave Morris.
Yes.
Cameron Austin.
Yes.
Susie Wamsley.
Yes.
Scott Petey.
Yes.
BJ Cox.
Yes.
Chris Howard.
Yes.
Haley Zensmaster.
Yes.
There it is. Sent it back.
Thank you.
Ordinance 2024-06. All right. Next up, ordinance 2024-09. Councilman Howard.
Ordinance 2024-09, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Logansport, Indiana pertaining to economic development efforts concerning the City of Logansport and the CAS Logansport Economic Development Organization. This is a first reading. I'll ask for a vote on ordinance 2024-09.
Second.
Any further discussion? Call for question.
Haley Zensmaster.
Yes.
BJ Cox.
Yes.
Dave Morris.
Yes.
Scott Petey.
Yes.
Chris Howard.
Yes.
Susie Wamsley.
Yes.
Cameron Austin.
Yes.
Ordinance 2024-09 passes on its first reading. Resolution 2024-108, Councilman Cox.
Resolution 2024-108, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Logansport, Indiana regarding tax abatements for personal property investment for Myers Spring. Mr. Mayor, I ask for a reading on 2024-108.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Call for question.
Haley Zensmaster.
Yes.
Dave Morris.
Yes.
Cameron Austin.
Yes.
Susie Wamsley.
Yes.
Scott Petey.
Yes.
BJ Cox.
Yes.
Chris Howard.
Yes.
Resolution 2024-108 passes. Resolution 2024-106, Councilman Petey.
Resolution 2024-106, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Logansport, Indiana, pledging sponsorship for the Squeal and the Eel Festival for 2024. Mr. Mayor, I ask for a vote on Resolution 2024-106, please.
Second.
Any further discussion? Call for question.
Chris Howard.
Yes.
Haley Zensmaster.
Yes.
BJ Cox.
Yes.
Scott Petey.
Yes.
Dave Morris.
Yes.
Cameron Austin.
Yes.
Susie Wamsley.
Yes.
Resolution 2024-106 passes. Resolution 2024-107, Councilwoman Wamsley.
Resolution 2024-107, a resolution of the Common Council of the City of Logansport, Indiana, transferring appropriations for the Logansport Parks and Recreation Department. I move for a vote on Resolution 2024-107.
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
This is the land over there on Front Street, the old park.
This is,
No.
No, this
Jan
is
is transferring money from the roof project to the swimming pool.
Okay. Remember the other day. Thanks, sorry.
Gotcha, yeah. Okay. All right. Call for question.
Cameron Austin.
Yes.
Susie Wamsley.
Yes.
Haley Zensmaster.
Yes.
Dave Morris.
Yes.
BJ Cox.
Yes.
Scott Petey.
Yes.
Chris Howard.
Yes.
Resolution 2024-107 passes. Right. Any public comments? Anyone in the audience who would like to make a comment, please come to the microphone, state your name and address for us, please.
No homework tonight. I'll be brief. I've got another meeting to go to. In 1980, the FBI came to town, and several local politicians found themselves on the receiving end of corruption indictments stemming back over a decade. justice came to town at that time. I didn't live in Logansport back then, but I was in college on the West Coast, and I opened my morning paper to read about a little town in Indiana that I'd never heard of, being described in a newspaper as one of the most corrupt places in the nation. I can't imagine what the residents felt back then, but I'm sure it was a sense of embarrassment and shame because everyone had looked the other way. After that time, that dark time, citizens of Logansport thought it was time to take their city back. It was time to change the image and move the city forward. Business leaders, churches, local organizations all came together to remove that stain to accomplish great things. And accomplish they did. They saved a small depot, they moved it downtown. They held the first Iron Horse Festival. The community came together and created an Iron Horse Museum to celebrate Logansport great railroad history. It brought people from all over the country. We didn't stop there. We created historic downtown districts, Little Turtle Waterway. We began the restoration of Bankers Row. We created a walking tour brochure, farmers market, and a Main Street program. The Med-Florida Jazz Festival was another national event. We came up with a lot of plans, and we couldn't implement them all, but we tried, and little by little, we changed the perception of Logansport. Our local government took steps to enshrine those accomplishments, to protect them. We created a local historic overlay district for Heritage Park. Now, I've authored state and national historic nominations, and they follow a very specific guideline as to what you can and cannot protect. Local districts, however, have more leeway. The depot had been moved, so it was typically not eligible as historic, so we had to rely on architecture and the fact it was one of the earliest known, still standing examples of railroad architecture to get that designation. We also relied heavily on association, and we noted that in the nomination. There were 2 lines in that nomination that was deliberate and was done to protect the Iron Horse Museum. Quote, "Today the depot serves as a museum and community facility for meetings, committees, and receptions. Everyone who enters the building is reminded of Logansport Rail's heritage and how vital the railroads were to Logansport's early economic growth. Designating this site preserves that history," end quote. That's a highly unusual line that you won't see in a national registry nomination, but you routinely see them in local districts. This was a deliberate move to establish the museum as protected as part of the overlay district. I talked to Mayor Fincher, who signed that ordinance, 2008-37. It was passed unanimously by the council and signed by Mayor Fincher, and that document states, "The Depot Iron Horse Museum shall bear the designation of outstanding." They didn't say the depot, they said the Depot/Iron Horse Museum. This was done to prevent stupid things from happening in the future. Indiana Code 36453 expressly limits what the mayor can and cannot do. He does not have the authority to create a park. That must be done by the Parks Board and reviewed and authorized by you, the City Council. You've heard the community. You know what our ordinance and state law says. We've sent over 140 pages of documentation to the State Attorney General's office and other appropriate agencies concerning this violation, and the fact the mayor prepared an RFP, accepted bids, and approved contracts without proper legislative authority to do so. Will those agencies act? We don't know for sure. It's likely they will. What will you as a member of council say if you get subpoenaed to appear before an investigator or grand jury? It's going to be very hard to claim you know nothing about it. Council meetings are broadcast, and people have been there to inform you of these issues over the past several council meetings. Equally important, what will you do if the IEDC grant is withdrawn? Where will the money come from? Remember what happened with the $650,000 downtown Orca grant. It went way over budget, we didn't get it done on time, and we didn't get the money, and the council had to scramble to get the funds to cover the bills. That was our taxpayer money to fix a preventable mess if we had done another round of RFPs and had vetted that contractor properly. We all remember the embarrassment during the Ted Franklin administration when that mayor thought the rules didn't apply to him, and we suffered national ridicule over the Corvette incident, which was in the national papers and on the late-night talk shows. Citizens have not been embarrassed enough. The council must do its job. The council must stop the project before it's stopped for us, and we go through another round of national embarrassment. Maybe that means a special session of council, but you need to take action and you cannot delay. I'd like to add that this morning I received an email communication from the State Attorney General's office. They have referred this action to the Indiana State Board of Accounts. I contacted them today, I had a phone meeting with them, and I have another meeting later this week. This is not going away. They're taking this seriously, and I'd like to thank you for your time.
Since you're a student of history,
You've brought up different times about public officials being arrested by the FBI. You never have mentioned that those public officials were found not guilty and the charges were dismissed after the first one that was tried had been found not guilty. And I think that's kind of an important distinction when you raise those kind of statements.
True. And it did actually result in our dramatically changing the way we did business in this city, because future council people, future policemen decided they did not want to go through that again.
And I'm going to say one thing, Paul, and you can consider it nitpicking, but you said we didn't get the money for the grant we had applied for the downtown project. We did get the money. The project did go over budget, but it was not because we did not get the money. We used their money just as it was allocated. And I would just say this, Paul, I ask you, you've told me you've had this list of names forever. You always get your folder, you get it out. When I said, can I have a copy of the list of people that have signed your petitions, you said, I can't because there's people on there that don't want their names exposed to the public. Well, here's what I would say to you at this point. I would say, if you've got a few names on there where they're afraid to show their name in public, you redact those handful of names and send me the list. I would ask you that. And the other thing that I would ask you is, aren't these the same issues that you presented to our city attorney? Okay. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a mailman at heart. Kelly's an attorney. If Kelly doesn't seem to have an issue with it, as a council member, I have to respect his authority. And at this point, I don't see an issue here. And I know that, hey, I'm not going to say every person in this town is in favor of what's going on down there, but I would say this, we sit up here, a lot of the decisions we make are pretty simple. We're just moving money from here to here to pay somebody. But not every decision is black and white. You might have an opinion, I might have an opinion. But I went to Columbus last year for a weekend away, and they have some tremendous old history. They have great architecture in that town if you've ever been there. But one of the things I noticed, I went in this beautifully restored building. That's their center for greeting people and whatnot. It's brand new. It's renovated inside. It's got the old trim and whatnot inside, but it looks like a brand new building. And I'm going to, sometimes you have to put your faith in people. The administration tells me that they're going to do a good job of preserving the inside of that building and making it look nice. I trust them. Now, hindsight might come back to bite me, but I don't think so. And at some point, you got to let the poor dog die. Let's bury it. Let's move on.
Well, I'd like to comment to you that if you think that you can threaten me about being subpoenaed or being brought into the front of a grand jury, I've worked in a law office for 40 years, and I will represent myself and this city well. So don't act like that's something I'm to be frightened of, because I'm not.
Didn't say you would be.
Yes, you did. You said, what do you think is going to happen?
What would you do?
Yeah, it's fine. I'll go and make a statement, just like they asked me to, and I'll answer their questions. Don't act like that's a threat to me, because it's not.
And to be clear, when Kelly and I had a conversation, did you not admit to me that perhaps we probably should have gone through the Parks Board?
I said that was because I misunderstood. I thought the Parks Board owned that property. And I found out, because I took your word for it, that they did, and I hadn't checked the ownership of the property. When it's owned by the civil city, they did it properly, in my opinion. I didn't call you back to say, hey, you made a mistake, but that's...
The AG decided to send it to the...
They know where to find us, Paul. They know where to find us.
Exactly. All right, any other public comments? Please come to the microphone, state your name and address for us, please.
Susan Gerald, 735 Walnut Ridge West, Logansport. BJ, I'd like to ask you, what prompted you to inquire about container homes?
When we have the ordinance 2406, I saw that right, and I just figured, there's something new, and it'd be nice to have one. And if something would happen to my house, that's what I plan on building, either that or,
So you have a personal interest in
Yeah.
possibly building one
you know,
yourself?
I've seen them where they use them for hotels or apartments.
I have too, yeah.
And they look nice and, you know, I think it's time we start letting more things come into this town without so many restrictions.
All the areas I've seen container homes in, they've had a neighborhood unto themselves, and it looks appropriate, and it looks great, and it's, the industrial look. And you know what they are, but some of them are very beautiful, can be beautiful. But, the evidence that we have of building the pole barn on 9th and North Street, to me, and I know everybody has their opinions, it looks horrendous.
And I made a note about that.
Historical building. I mean, it's, we do have rundown homes, but putting a metal shed
Yeah.
right there and using it as home, and I'm not opposed to people having barn dominiums, I know it's all the rage, and in the appropriate spot. So we need to be very careful about how we, where we would put something like that.
We also have the house over there on Miami, next to the old car lot across from the River Church. It's that little tiny two-story black house, and it's awesome looking.
What's that?
There's a house over there off Miami. It's two-story. It's like a tiny house, steel structure.
I've seen that, yeah. And, that looks okay there, I think, but, to each his own.
Yeah. I just think there's too many restrictions. Every time someone wants to do something different, well, we gotta go here, and do this and do that,
I appreciate the restrictions, and I appreciate, having the boards to go mull this over. Okay. Thanks for answering my question. And as far as the depot goes, I love historical old buildings. And, even though this was never a depot, they made it up to look like a depot, and it looks cute like that, and as much as they preserve as much as they possibly can in it. Now, they say there's structural issues with the weight and all that, that time will tell. But I would love to have a welcome center right where that sits, and go in, wash your hands and see
Yeah, you need restrooms there.
Yeah, we need restrooms and see what there is to do in town, and it's a perfect spot right at that signal arch. I mean, I think it's going to be great.
It's going to be fine.
Thank you, Susie. Any other public comments? Just come to the microphone, state your name and address for us. Well, she's on her way up. I wanted to let you know, Susan, I understand your point and I understand BJ's, but I do like the way that the Planning Commission and the BZA did it. Because I do like the fact that they will have to come to them right before. So I do like that idea, for sure.
Hi,
Go ahead, Crystal.
Crystal Miller, 2211 North Street. I just have a question about the area. Obviously, we know that I am opposed to the bathrooms, but what about the Little Turtle Waterway sign? There's like all these broken lights, like are we fixing that as part of this project, or is that something separate? Like, if we're redoing this area, are we just gonna ignore what we've already have there, or are we addressing these things as well?
So the deputy mayor actually can give you an update if he wants to come up to the mic and let us know. He was hoping I wouldn't call him, but I did.
Yeah, so we met down there today with Aaron and Jan and Kevin and talked through some of the options down there about, the additional things that we can get done through the grant, and that was one of them. So it's a pretty high priority to make that up and look nice and make sure that there's adequate lighting to really make it a showpiece as we finish the project. So it's absolutely in plans, and it's gonna be done.
Thanks. Yeah, to the container homes, I would just like to say that I agree that they are, they can be well utilized in certain areas, but I hate this thing on 9th Street, the barn thing with the apartment upstairs, whatever it is, and the whatever, and I don't love the one on Miami either, but I think what I would like to see us do is be more focused in our neighborhoods and not put metal siding houses, barns, in the middle of Victorian neighborhoods. And so when you're considering that planning part or that zoning, that you keep that in mind, that maybe it does need to be restricted to certain areas or for specific use. Because I have a Victorian home and I don't want to see, I have enough problems with the neighbor's house being crazy colors, whatever, that's fine. But it'll hurt my property value if I'm having, I have this Victorian home and then there's a barn next door. I think it really impacts my property, and so I just ask that you take that in consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal.
Thank you, Crystal.
Any other public comments? All right, seeing none. Any council member comments?
Yeah, for the heck of it, Mr. Mayor, I drove down Market, then went down Broadway, then North and High. And on Market Street from, let's say 8th Street down to 24th, we got 24 holes, potholes, cutouts, whatever you want to call them. Broadway, there's 26. They're all on the north side. North Street's got 52, and they're horrendous. And High Street's got 48. And I know the street department doesn't have in their budget. It's not their fault. But are they going to do the south side of the streets now, or?
So ultimately, we have met with Logansport Utilities, and we are in discussions about how this is not going to happen anymore. Logansport Utilities does a lot of cutouts, and as you can tell, it doesn't work out very well when they're done. And Tony is frustrated just as much as we are. The fact that we are spending hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars repairing our local streets, and then someone comes in and destroys them. So yes, we are working on a plan, and as far as I'm concerned, over 50% of that should not be coming from the city. So we're working on things right now as they're going forth, and we'll update council as they go and continue, but you are absolutely correct. We are just as frustrated. It sucks.
They've torn out sidewalks and they don't replace them, and their curbs, I think Helen Keller could have did a better job.
Well, one thing you have to understand is the utilities, and Greg had been the one to get into that with, but we let him go early, so. But what they got is several $1 million grant that for free, people who have lead pipe water lines into their home are getting them replaced for free. And when you dig those holes, you can't go pave the street over it every time you dig a hole. So it's going to be a project like the mayor's talking about. But it's a fabulous thing for our community to have that. I think it's $8 million, and they're going back trying to get more, because practically every, and maybe here's the details, it's extremely important.
I understand all that, but it's.
Well, but it can't happen overnight. I mean,
And it's true.
Yeah. So we did have that meeting with them, and we're looking at some solutions that might include some future rounds that, can accommodate the paving of the streets with their grants and their low-interest loans. The issue that they run into a little bit is right now there's not the ability to get everybody to do it right away. They need a lot of public participation in that. And so the problem that we face is that we can't go in and redo all of this area knowing that there's a couple of homes along the block that, as soon as they can get in contact with the utilities, can get their lead lines replaced as well. And so that's the balancing act that we're trying to find. We think that there might be some changes later this year at the state level that make that a little bit easier on the utility, and that they can just get in there and get it done without having to wait for a landlord in California to respond, for the, person that's renting from them that doesn't speak English and can't give authority. So that's kind of the situation that we ran into. But we do think that later this year and in future rounds of this project, because they're going to do more and they're going to do a lot more throughout the city, that we can partner with them and get those roads repaired and repaved at a fraction of the cost. So that is part of the plan.
And I will tell you,
Part of the issue is-
everybody's frustrated about it, right? But at the same time, at least we have somebody that is a superintendent at Logansport Utilities right now that is willing to work with us, that is willing to sit down and talk to us about what's going on and hear how we feel. So I think we got to take the positive with the negative, if you will, in the situation. But at least we're working on it.
Yep, it's a problem to be addressed, but it's a good, it's a problem caused by good things, and it's that getting those lead lines out of there, and that'll be really good for the community. So.
Well, I was just going to say, the other part of that is that, current, Central Paving shuts down. And, you know, their goal was to do so much and then go back and patch them all at one time after they'd settled. Winter comes along, we wanted them to keep working because, you know, Greg's currently trying to get us another grant to continue to do the same thing. Logansport's way ahead of the curve on this, but the streets are definitely suffering in the meantime. But the end result's going to be fantastic for the city of Logansport.
You good? Thank you, Jake. Any other council member comments? Yes, Susie?
I'd like to just invite everyone to come to on March 13th, the Parks Department they'll have their monthly board meeting at 5:30, but at 4:30, they'll be presenting their 5-year plan, and you'll be able to take a look at what's going to happen for the next 5 years in all of our parks. You'll be impressed with all that's been done and where we're headed, and I just want to invite everyone to come to that.
Where's the meeting?
Here, right here. Yeah, right here. You can just come here and you'll be able to participate.
Could you repeat the time and date and day?
Sure. It's Wednesday, and it's March 13th. The presentation is at 4:30, and then the board meeting will happen at 5:30.
All right. Thank you, Susie. All right. Public comment?
I'm Sunny Miller. I'm still a resident of Lafayette, but working on a home on Smith Street, a 1900 old house with my partner. I just wanted to ask about the pipes. We have had our pipe swapped out. The people who did the work were wonderful. The sidewalk is still gravel with 2 cones decorating, but we're being patient. I had a water intake pipe swapped out in Lafayette many decades ago at a home we owned, a husband and I owned at that time, and the inside was crusted very thickly with calcium because we have hard water. And I wondered, we think of lead pipes as being terribly dangerous, but doesn't it require a very high acid to dissolve the lime buildup on all of those lead pipes? So I just wonder how much this is a benefit for the citizens of Logansport as compared to the contractors, which have a lot of work thanks to that federal money, is it? Or state, federal? Yeah. Does anyone know that chemistry of lime coating lead pipes?
They're taking all the lead pipe out and putting in, I think it's plastic.
It's plastic.
All in it.
It's plastic, right. And, you know, every new material has its problem that we discover down the line usually. I just wonder if you all have heard the chemistry of why the lead pipes are a hazard once they're encrusted with lime. That's my question.
The Utility Service Board will meet March 26th at 5 o'clock, if that would be a question for them.
Okay, thank you. I didn't say my name, Sunny Miller.
That's all right. Thank you, Sunny. All right. Any other comments from the public or council?
So I was also going to bring up the whole pothole deal with the water mains and issues like that. We do have a couple that are pretty deep, like they're just gravel still, especially if you go in like Miami, especially near the end where you basically have to go one lane. Like there's one that's just gravel.
I think you'll find out that most of those are NIPSCO. Because they're also digging holes.
I know, that's the problem.
Everybody's
digging holes.
On board.
Everybody's digging.
Yeah, some are paved.
I don't know the hole. That's a common refrain.
Oh, go.
Hi there.
Hello.
My name's Kerry Miller. I just had more of a generic question. I would like to obtain a copy of the complete city ordinances. I realize it's probably a big stack, but doing a cursory search on the city website, going to the library, they inform me that they don't have it. So a lot of what you guys talk about every month, a lot of these documents and things, I think it would be important that they'd be made readily available to the public. I realize it would be a job for somebody, but I think it would be important to have that available maybe at the library, on the city website, or available at the city building for someone to maybe even pay for a printing of a copy, but just for people to be able to get that.
Councilman Morris, when we first came into office, our administration, you were already here. Were you guys working on Tyler, what was it called? Tyler Encode or something like that? Or what was that called?
Well, there was an
Was that what
upgrade
it
to
was?
the computer system. It
Yeah,
didn't
to
have
where-
anything to do with the coding. Or
Transferred the codes to the computer system, right?
Let me tell you, they're not all.
We've been working on
that. Well, it has, it's a major undertaking that needs somebody to do it on a full-time basis. The last time, and when I say full-time, for a period of time to do it, because it's hard to piecemeal, because you guys keep passing stuff. And that's part of the project, is to get them updated all the time and have a system set up to do that. The last time we had a book published, we had some law student did it about 50 years ago. And there hasn't been a book put out since that time. There's been piecemeal product, and all of our ordinances are not online.
Right.
Dwayne, I've had to rely on his help when he was over the last 4 years, because they have some in folders. Some of our department heads have an ordinance that's pertinent to them in their file folder. So there ain't none, is the short answer. But it's a good idea, and if you get, I think it's $10,000 to $20,000 range, we can get somebody to do it.
Well, and you have the ability to do a request for public access for records to the clerk's office anytime you want to the mayor's office. You can, whatever ordinances you'd like to see, you can just make a request to the clerk's office, and there are laws about how quickly he has to respond to that and get you your information.
Sure, yeah, I mean, and looking for something specific, but, I mean, I don't know what I don't know, as far as like what to request. Again, I know it would be a job, but having that complete record of what we're working with available to the public.
I do that all the time.
Yeah.
Same thing.
So,
And Kelly's right, I've been on council, this is my 9th year, and it's not been updated since I've been on council. It had been talked about a couple times, but it's never been done.
But you can ask for specific ordinances related to a topic. You can say, I want all the ordinances for the last 10 years related to the council bylaws. And they'll give you, that's Tyler's job to fulfill that request. So if you know what you're asking for, then, just start with the subject matter and make a request.
sure. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I guess another question I've got, do we know the status or progress of the Michigan Avenue project?
That.
As Dave knows.
I knew it was
terrible
gonna,
to drive
I knew it was
around
gonna
that.
come up. No, I do not have any status update on that. No.
And then, as far as the detoured roads, those are gonna be scheduled to be repaved, I take it, once we're done? Because they were trash to begin with.
I feel like
Now
Tony
they're-
is speaking through you right
Really bad now.
Yeah.
I can tell you a couple things, Cam. I don't know the exact date on Michigan Avenue. I think it was originally scheduled for 25 or 26 to be redone by the state. They have a site, Erin could probably, is she still here? Can you send the council the site they can go to on NDOT for that? And it'll tell you all the projects and the timelines on those. And I also know that Tony is waiting for the detours to end. They encumbered money to do Hannah Street. I know that stretch there that's real bad. And I've mentioned to Greg and the guys that are working that they've destroyed the road there, but that goes through Rockwell, or Matthew Warren,
yep.
for the youngsters. But,
That's another very big
road work is gonna be a
project.
hairy topic, and like the mayor said, Greg and a couple of his guys sat down with Tony and Brian Gleitz and Jacob, and had a real good discussion about, he's gonna go back to 5-Star and see about doing some work quickly on some of the ones that have been let go because of the winter conditions and whatnot. So hopefully we'll see some improvement, but it's like Tony said, we don't want to spend a bunch of money to turn around and be running lead lines up the street.
Yeah.
And NIPSCO, I don't know what their thing is, but they've found seems like thousands of leaks all of a sudden in our city, and they're going before the Board of Works and asking for, I don't know, 15, 20 curb cuts.
Every
It
week.
seems like weekly.
Yeah, every week.
So it's kind of hang on till we can get past some of this.
Because exactly what happened on Erie Avenue, that was all scheduled, it would have been done last fall had they
Yep.
known where their
Right.
lines were. They had valves just under the pavement, and we were lucky that Dykeman's
Mhm.
people found
Right.
those to save explosions down
Yeah.
there, because they were tearing out the street to repave. So that's the reason your street on Erie Avenue took the winter months with nothing happening to have it done, is because and that's got them started, and they paid a bunch of money to the city for the delay that we suffered, over $100,000. But it's now in their hands, and they're going around finding them like crazy, because they are dangerous.
Yes?
Are those dangerous points being made known to the public?
That's what they're supposed to be doing, is finding where they are, and their gas leaks, where there's seepage, that they have some kind of a truck that's a sensor. You can come to the city Board of Works every Wednesday morning, because there's a new list of them.
I would ask they would put online for everyone to be aware.
Yeah, they're online. Board of Works is online every week.
Every Wednesday.
And you can look at the list on there. And, you know, it's one of those things where you might come home someday and see a bunch of flags in your yard and have to ask why.
I will say that the fire department, we go out on the gas leaks all the time. And they're minor, there's no risk with them. I mean, it takes our meter, we got a pinpoint. It's more of a thing, they're just going out correcting it, but there's no danger to the public because of it.
No cigarette, and ignite it.
Thank you, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
Last call.
One more thing that I'm done.
Yes.
On Cliff Drive, it would be possible to stick at the west end right there at Cliff and Psychic, maybe 2 telephone poles on both sides of the road, and then run a chain across there with a sign said if you hit the sign, you're not making through the bridge, because the semis go down Cliff Drive all the time. The last one, they had to tow all the way back there because they got about 10 feet under, and that was it. You know, and just a sign there said if you hit this, you're not making it through.
We can work on something like that, sure. I don't know about the chain part, but yeah.
Clearance signs are working.
Clearly.
I'm done complaining.
Okay. All right.
Hey, I got to see that a couple times delivering mail, actually see them hit them there.
All right. Miscellaneous business, any matters not already considered, including ADA Section 504 compliance or concerns. All right, seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn at 7:27 PM?
Second.
Motion and a second. Call for question?
Dave Morris,
Yes.
Haley Zensmaster,
Yes.
Chris Howard,
Yes.
BJ Cox,
Yes.
Cameron Austin,
Yes.
Susie Walmsley,
Yes.
Scott Peety.
Yes.
We are adjourned. Have a great night. By the way, if anybody knows, I just woke